Plato provided many details about the people of Atlantis. He wrote about their customs, political, religious, social, and military inclinations. When the people of Atlantis are compared to the people of pre-conquest Mexico, we find matches. According to Plato, Atlantis was ruled by a powerful dynasty of kings. They ruled the city of Atlantis and the continental region beyond the city, another key indication that the country of Atlantis wasn't an island. By the time of the Spanish conquest, the Aztecs dominated most of Mesoamerica's political landscape north of Maya Yucatan. Aztec rulers sitting upon the throne in Tenochtitlan were firmly in control of the land, exerting their will through successive lines of hereditary monarchy. Their rule was unilateral and absolute. They were very powerful people. Montezuma II was the ruler of the Aztec Empire when Cortes arrived to Mexico in 1519. The Aztec emperor was the ninth in succession of his particular house or dynasty. Montezuma's rule over northern Mesoamerica was so complete and his power so absolute that Bernal Diaz del Castillo commented he got whatever he wanted. The governors and officials of Aztec-controlled territories often complained to the Spanish conquistadors about Montezuma's abuse of executive power and his parasitic control over the subjugated provinces. Plato said the kings of Atlantis ruled the entire island, other islands, and part of the continent. With the exception of the Maya, the province of Tlaxcala, and a few other small pockets of resistance, the Aztecs controlled a large chunk of real estate on the North American continent when the Spanish conquistadors arrived in 1519. At the time of Montezuma's death, the Aztecs controlled 38 Mesoamerican provinces. Although they didn't control any of the Caribbean islands per se, the Aztecs did control all the inhabited islands found in the lakes of the Valley of Mexico, including Tenochtitlan. If the Maya are added to the Atlantis equation, as they should be, then the Maya island of Cozumel in the Caribbean also qualifies for Plato's criteria of other islands controlled by Atlantis. At the time of the Spanish conquest of Mexico, the Aztecs were ruled by a powerful dynasty of kings. They controlled the island of Tenochtitlan, the islands of the lakes, and parts of continental North America, all of which matches Plato's criteria for Atlantis. Plato said the wealth of Atlantis was the greatest in the world. Wealth, by the standards of the ancient Old World, was measured in land, gold and silver, and the possession thereof, either individually or collectively as a nation. Mention the word Aztec, and one of the first things that comes to mind is gold. Lots of gold. Gold brought the Spanish conquistadors to Mexico, and gold motivated them to bring the Aztec Empire to its knees. The amount of gold the Spanish conquistadors found in Aztec Mexico was beyond their wildest dreams. They describe in detail the multitude of golden objects worth millions of dollars in today's money presented to them by the Aztecs, who more often than not gave it away freely, without hesitation or second thought. The profusion of Aztec gold was by far the favorite subject discussed by Bernal Diaz del Castillo in his autobiography, The Discovery and Conquest of Mexico. The actual numbers on American gold and silver are staggering. Between 1519 and 1670, The Spanish crown extracted from Mexico and Peru 25,555 pounds of gold and 134,759 pounds of silver, much of it in finely made objects. The gold accumulated by the pre-conquest Aztecs was impressive, echoing Plato's words about the wealth of Atlantis. As Montezuma said to Cortes, "I am a great king and inherit the riches of my ancestors." Plato said the people of Atlantis sacrificed bulls in the temple of Poseidon. The Spanish conquistadors said the Aztecs sacrificed people in the temple of Huitzilopochtli, the equivalent of the temple of Poseidon. Plato clearly stated the Atlanteans used no metal weapons in the sacrificial ritual. The Spanish conquistadors said the Aztecs used obsidian knives on their human sacrifices. Obsidian is a volcanic glass and is non-metallic. According to author Edith Hamilton, the ancient Greeks were so repulsed by human sacrifices, they often changed it to animal sacrifices, or excluded it altogether when it appeared in literature, drama, or poetry. It can be argued that the bull sacrifices of Atlantis and the use of non-metallic weapons are a Greek euphemism for the human sacrifices of Mesoamerica. Plato said the kings of Atlantis secured the sacrificial victim and performed the actual sacrifice. It's recorded that Cortes and some of his men approached the Templo Mayor and requested an audience with Montezuma while he was inside one of the temples atop the pyramid. 6 priests and 2 local territorial leaders were sent to stall Cortes because Montezuma was busy performing human sacrifices. Like Atlantis, the Aztec king performed the actual sacrifice. Plato said the Atlanteans used a noose to secure the sacrificial victim. In pre-conquest Mexico, prisoners of war were sacrificed. Because some prisoners of war were reluctant to meet their demise atop the sacrificial pyramid, they were led up the many steps by a snug-fitting noose that was tied around the neck and attached to a long wooden pole. Plato said the Atlanteans consecrated the limbs of the sacrificial victim upon completion of the sacrifice. When something is consecrated, it is separated, as holy, from that which is considered not holy. The Atlanteans cut the limbs from the body of the sacrificial victim after the sacrifice. The Aztecs consecrated the limbs of their sacrificial victims also. Bernal Diaz del Castillo described a human sacrificial scene in an Aztec coastal town shortly after the Spanish conquistadors arrived in Mexico. According to Bernal, an officer, Pedro de Alvarado, entered a building and was greeted by the sight of the already consecrated limbs of a human sacrificial victim. Plato clearly stated Atlantis conducted a military invasion of the Mediterranean basin and conquered the African continent from Libya to the border of Egypt and the European continent from Gibraltar to Tyrrhenia in modern Italy. Like the elephants of Mexico, we find another strange paradox in Plato's writings pointing to Mesoamerica. Unknown to Plato, he described the almost exact geopolitical landscape of the Mediterranean basin as it existed in 900 BC, 500 years before he was born. The European and African territories conquered by Atlantis, as it turns out, were actually conquered by an unfamiliar race of people who survived as an independent Mediterranean nation into Roman times. The ancient nations of the Mediterranean didn't call the invaders Atlanteans. They called them Phoenicians, also known as the biblical Philistines. The Phoenicians first appeared on the Old World historical radar in the 12th century BC during a naval encounter with ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptians said they came in warships. They were described as a mysterious people of the sea, and their origin was unknown. By 900 BC, the mysterious Phoenicians controlled the Mediterranean basin from the Straits of Gibraltar to the border of Egypt in Africa, the Iberian Peninsula, and several large islands that loomed over the Etruscans of Tyrrhenia on mainland Europe, almost exactly as Plato said for Atlantis. According to accepted history, the Phoenicians came from the east and migrated to the Mediterranean basin from the ancient Mesopotamian region. Unfortunately, there is no credible written or archaeological evidence to support the idea that the Phoenicians originally migrated to the Mediterranean from the Mesopotamian region by land or sea in ancient times. The Phoenicians first appear on the historical radar in the 12th century BC. They arrive in a naval armada from the west, ready to do battle with ancient Egypt, the most powerful nation in the region at the time. The Phoenicians, the mysterious people of the sea, arrive on the Old World historical radar in a large invasion fleet, not the Mayflower. Something more than a migration is going on here. They appear suddenly, they appear in warships, and their origin is unknown, just like Atlantis. In a letter to the Saturday Evening Post dated January 13, 1827, a gentleman named C.S. Rafinesque said ancient Maya hieroglyphs discovered near Palenque, Mexico, were very different from any that were previously discovered. When comparing the odd Maya hieroglyphs to other alphabets of the ancient world, C.S. Rafinesque said the Maya inscriptions matched the old Libyan alphabet. He said old Libyan glyphs were very ancient and may have been used by a people he called Atlantes, the ancestors of modern Berbers in North Africa. Some consider Old Libyan or ancient Berber glyphs an early version of the Phoenician alphabet. The ancient Berber alphabet eventually became known as the Tifinagh alphabet. The word Tifinagh comes from the phrase Tifinagh, which means our invention, and the Phoenician letters. According to C.S. Rafinesque, somewhere near Palenque, Mexico, on some undisclosed stone or building, there are early Phoenician-style inscriptions. Phoenicians and Mesoamericans shared the grisly practice of human sacrifice. They also shared a myth with common themes centered on human sacrifice. Those common theme myths are found in the Aztec tale of Nanahuatzin and the Phoenician tale of Alyssa and the Oxhide. A 1st century BC Greek historian described the child sacrifices of Carthage, a city founded by the Phoenicians that fell to the Romans in 146 BC. Carthage was fond of child sacrifices. The most notorious record of Carthaginian child sacrifice took place in 310 BC, when a Greek army came close to attacking Carthage. Afraid the gods were angry with them, the Carthaginians sacrificed close to 300 children, none older than 12 years old. Recent archaeological digs in ancient Carthage have discovered the children's bones. We find a similar mindset in Aztec Mexico. When times were bad, the blood flowed to appease the gods. During the final weeks of the siege of Tenochtitlan, when certain defeat loomed for the Aztecs, scores of human sacrifices were made daily atop the Templo Mayor on the altar of Huitzilopochtli. Victims included captured Spanish soldiers. Bernal Diaz del Castillo recounts watching the Aztecs roll dozens of dead bodies down the long, steep pyramid steps. The Phoenician practice of human sacrifice is odd. It occurs many centuries after the advanced civilizations and barbarian tribes of Europe, Asia Minor, and Egypt disengaged from the practice. Both the Maya and Phoenicians made purple and red dye. Both civilizations used the same ingredients for the dyes, and both civilizations manufactured the dyes using the same process. The key ingredient used for manufacturing Phoenician red dye was cochineal, an insect that is native to the Americas, including Mesoamerica. The Phoenicians held a monopoly on the production and sale of purple dye in Europe, Africa, and the Holy Land. The purple dye trade was a financial bonanza for the Phoenicians of the ancient Mediterranean.